So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out for the public hearing on the proposed capital improvement project. Tonight, we're going to share about the project, talk to you about what the project entails, and talk to you a little bit about how the committee went from the project that we had proposed to the community last December.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Donnelly. I'm the business official. So we get the presentation started with the question of why do we want or why do we need a capital improvement project? We're certainly making improvements and minor repairs, through our general budget. But when it gets to the bigger ticket items like replacing roofs or boilers, which we have in the project, or any of those more expensive items, we look to a capital project to take advantage of the aid ability to make it affordable for our community. So a bit about the aid ability of the project. So Bloomfield currently receives 77% in state aid, building aid, for expenses with an approved capital project. So 77% is a perfect world number. Later in the presentation, we'll go over the specifics to the plan. There's a process that State Ed will look at our plan and then determine, what is aidable, what's not. We aim to have everything be aidable, but there will be certain pieces that won't. And so when we look at the actual financing plan, we'll use 73%. And again, that's just so that we can take into kind of like a worst case scenario situation. So when we say no tax impact, we know that even in that worst case scenario, no tax impact. And building aid, and we'll talk about as we go forward, it's in the district's best interest to keep our building aid stable. It's a big part of our funding, and it helps, keep our infrastructure in good shape moving forward for many, many years.
I just want to stay on this slide for a moment and touch on that 77%. If you recall, in December, our aid was at 78%. One of the things that happens is that aid fluctuates depending on your property wealth. So as property values increase, the state looks at a district and says, well, you're wealthy, so you don't need as much aid, and that aid ratio drops. So we dropped a percentage in aid. I think sometimes it's a misnomer. People sometimes think that we like to see as a school district property values increase. We don't, because we lose aid on that. So how do we develop capital improvement projects? And again, we talked about this last December as well. So our process for projects is we bring together a committee, a group of made up of various stakeholders, community members, administrators, architects, engineers, fiscal advisors, board members, etc. That committee then reviews the building condition survey, and that building condition survey is something that's required by SED. SED requires all school districts to have somebody come in and evaluate your buildings, your grounds, and identify things that you're going to need to think about addressing, fixing, enhancing, and put it on a list. That list then has to be submitted to SED, because if something happens that we don't address and it was on there, SED says, hey, look, that's on you. You knew that roof needed to be replaced. You didn't address it like you should have. That's on you. We're not going to give you aid for that. The committee then identifies specific items to consider for inclusion in the project from that survey. So they also review a list of needs and wants that are carried over from previous years that just didn't get addressed. And they review and discuss current needs and opportunities for efficiencies. And then the group helps to kind of frame or put together the proposed project. So if you recall, after the last project was not approved, and so the committee really went back to work to incorporate community input. So for those of you who may remember back in December, in addition to the vote, we also asked community members to fill out a survey if they were so inclined. So what we did was we took a look at the survey results, and then we analyzed those. And here's some information. So we had 59%, almost 60% of the voters vote no on the last project, and about 40% of the voters vote yes on the last project. So when you look at survey or the exit poll results, about 30% of all voters completed that exit poll. About 35% of the people that voted yes completed that exit poll, and about 24% of the people that voted no completed that exit poll. So when you look at that exit poll, when we looked at that exit poll, we looked at what parts of the project influenced people in their vote the most. So you can see the biggest influence was the relocation of the transportation facility. The next biggest influence was the creation of the new student learning space. Then turf infields, safety and security, cost. There were some people that didn't respond, and then about 11 people who had listed other things. Okay. When you look at yes voters, relocation of the transportation facility and the creation of that new student learning space were things that the people who voted yes wanted. Also, safety and security was big, and then turf infields also showed up. Conversely, when you look at what influenced no voters, again, biggest influence, relocation of the transportation facility, creation of that new student learning space. People that voted no didn't like that. Turf infields was a big one for people that voted no. They didn't like the turf infields. And then cost was a big factor with people who voted no. So again, you'll see the people that voted yes, cost was not in effect. Okay. So we recognized that we had some work to do. We looked to put forward a capital improvement project that listens to feedback. So what we did was we met with SWBR and Campus Construction to discuss those survey results. We went through those survey results in detail. And then we asked them for options. We met with the facilities committee to review the survey results, to discuss the options that we could consider based on those results. Okay, we asked for them to come back with a redesign. And then we really said, our work is this. We have to reduce the cost. We have to get this project at a no additional tax impact. The feedback that we received from people on the building was we felt it was too big, we felt it was too fancy. So we said we need to go back and we need to shrink the footprint of that building, and we need to make sure that it's a much more modest building. And it was clear if we were going to reduce cost and people didn't like turf, those two things played in together. The turf was fairly costly. And so we cut that out to save costs. So SWBR and campus came back with this option. So they said, we could just expand the bus garage, current bus garage. We can build those two bays, because again, the current garage is tight and we need more space to work. And we could put that bus wash bay here, but it's going to close off the parking lot. And when we looked at the option as a committee, the committee unanimously said, not a good option. The issues were, as you can see, these are pull-in and back-out bays. So we would be backing buses out while buses were potentially pulling in. We'd be backing buses out while maintenance vehicles, lawnmowers, plow trucks, etc. were coming in. And this would make the campus really, really tight. In addition, we're still using this area as the loading dock, so semi-trucks would have to, again, continuing to come in and out of this area. Again, Facilities Committee said, while an add-on to the current garage, would be cost effective because you've already got the property, it's not going to solve the safety concerns that are there. In fact, they believe that it would create additional safety concerns. They also felt that it would create more congestion on campus, and they noted that to close this off would really kind of pigeonhole us into ever being able to use that space down the road for student learning space. So again, that's not in the project currently. And like I talked about last time, why would we want to do a student learning space there? Well, really, the idea is we could lease that space to BOCES. BOCES could run an ag program on site, and then we would generate revenue for that lease. To give you an idea, I mean, some people said, how much is it going to be? Well, I'll give you an idea. So last year, we took a look at the placement list, special ed placement list. There were 100, at the start of the year, there were 168 students at BOCES who needed a BOCES placement but couldn't get a placement because there just weren't programs for those kids. Some of them were ours. So we reached out to BOCES and we said, look, we've got some classroom space in our elementary school that we're not using. Could you use that space to start a program? And they said, yeah, we think we could. So we worked with them, planned with them, and just signed a 10-year contract with BOCES that is now generating $183,000 in revenue for the district. Our tax levy, if we raise that levy 1%, that's about $100,000. So that's about 1.8 on our levy. So we have programs now, BOCES programs running out of our building. BOCES provides the teachers, BOCES provides the administrator, BOCES provides the speech therapy, OT, the PT. All we do is provide the space. We charge them to clean the rooms, charge them for a little bit of administrative support when needed, and it generates us that revenue. And we wanted to do a similar thing with that garage. It doesn't preclude us now not doing anything with that garage. It doesn't preclude us down the road. But again, if you look at this would definitely mean we couldn't do that. So option 2 was this. So they said the biggest cost was the site cost. If you remember, we proposed the facility kind of where the softball field is, and then the driveway would go toward Oakland. So they said that was an expensive driveway because it ran through a swampy area and it was long. They said if you move the building closer to the elementary school where the current JV baseball field is, that would make the driveway much less shorter. We could shrink the footprint of the building, and we'd be cutting costs considerably. But then we said, well, we're also, again, going back to that situation where we're losing 2 fields. And so they said, well, yes, but what if we put turf on this field and made it a multi-use field, a baseball and softball field? We said, well, again, we know the community wasn't in favor of turf, so not sure how that's going to help. And then as we also look at it, this field would be too small to play on anyway, so it would essentially serve as a practice field, and it makes absolutely no sense to spend money to turf a field that's basically going to just be a practice field. So we said that option is not good either. So the committee said, all right, we got to reduce costs, we got to get this to no tax impact. We know we need to shrink the building floor plan, so we started working on that. They said, we know we need to remove turf. That's not going to work for us. And we know to cut costs, we want to get rid of that student learning space. We don't want to, but we can do that later. And so they said, can you talk to the town? Can you have a conversation with the town to see if the town would sell us property? So we did. I had a conversation with the town. The town was willing to sell us property where the town barns are. But they had 3 acres to sell, which would be way too small for what we need. In addition, the acreage was very hilly, so the site costs would be pretty expensive because you'd have to cut out that hill to flatten it and to put in the lot. And the town is looking at building new town barns, and they would have to move their town barns to shift in order to give us more property, and that wouldn't work. So we said, well, there's property at the industrial park. Maybe that's a location that would work for us. So we investigated, and they said, yes, we have property, we're willing to sell it, and you can build that bus garage there. So we went through the process, investigated, said this would work. That's an aidable expense, so that land purchase is an aidable expense. And so what we did was we made a contingent offer. Okay? So we did not buy the property. We have not purchased the property. It's contingent on the passing of this project. Okay? We didn't want to purchase property, have the project go down, and then have property that we couldn't use. That didn't make any sense. So we wanted to make sure that we made it contingent on this project. So you'll see it's just past the intersection of 5 and 20 and 64. It's on a flat part of the road near where the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. It currently has a double lane, so a bus can make a left-hand turn and a bus next to it can make a right-hand turn. And again, there's a great line of sight. It would be tucked back in. And so, again, the committee said, again, it's aidable. It's millions of dollars cheaper than putting turf on fields. This might work. So the architects and campus came up with a design. So this is what the footprint of that proposed building would look like. You'll see the building is here. Driver parking and public parking would be in front of the building. And then in back of the building, fenced in, would be our bus hold. We put the buses on the back because if ever we needed to add infrastructure for EV buses, we could put charging stations here. We wouldn't have to rip up any parking lot. It's all dirt back there. This is kind of a elevation map. So this is what the front of the building would look like and what the back of the building would look like. So this would be a drive-through wash bay. This would be a drive-through bus bay. And then we would have one pull-in and back-out bay. And then we would have one bay that's much smaller that would just be able to service our small vehicles, pickup trucks, Tahoe, etc. So this is a rendering of what that building looks like. Again, the committee said we want this to be a modest building. This is a pre-engineered building, cheapest building that you can build. And again, the back of the building. So you can see, again, the front shows the 2 bays. This is a drive-through wash bay. This is a drive-through bus bay. And then the back has the additional drive-in and back-out bay and smaller bay to service our smaller vehicles. This is a floor plan of the building. Again, you can see drive-through wash bay. This is drive-in, back-out maintenance bay. drive-through maintenance bay. Again, that drive-through maintenance bay, if ever we had to purchase an EV bus, is going to be important because you can tow that bus through. And then a small bay that we can service those vehicles, the Tahoe, pickup trucks, etc. So, items that we included and then didn't include from the last project. So, this was a slide direct from last December's presentation, so you can see how this project changed. We are still proposing to relocate the transportation facility. The current garage is not great. That current garage, we're getting by with it, but it's super tight. If you've been there, you know we've got mechanics who are using boards, literally using boards, because the floor is not even to get vehicles on whips, and that's just not safe. There's also not the room needed to work on two buses at the same time. We took out the school-based health clinic, so there's no work on that side of the current bus garage proposed. We're continuing to look at replacing the PA and clock systems at both elementary school and middle high school. That's desperately needed. We're continuing to bring forward items like boiler replacement, door replacements throughout the district, and HVAC work throughout the district. We got rid of the new student learning space, got rid of the turf infields on the baseball and softball fields, and are continuing to move forward, refinishing floors, gym floors at our elementary gym as well as our small gym at the middle high school. Again, work that's included, relocation of the garage, that includes new build and off-site work. There's no EV-related items in this project. HVAC work throughout the district, replacement of the PA clock system, door replacements. Those doors, we're looking to replace doors inside as well as outside. Elementary boiler, replacing concrete stairs at the elementary school courtyard, art room sink replacements in the middle high school, and then addressing some drainage issues at the upper baseball field. So the upper baseball field has an issue with drainage in right field. The right field line is extremely wet, and we're looking at addressing that issue to make sure that that dries and drains like it should. This is a picture of one of the doors. As doors age and moisture seeps in, they split apart. Like you can see, we're looking to replace doors so this doesn't happen. This is a picture of the elementary boilers. These are the concrete stairs in the elementary courtyard. Part of the issue is not only are these stairs in very bad shape, but the pitch of the cement, water pitches toward that, which is not great either. So we're looking at that slab, fixing that slab, and making sure the water pitches away from those stairs. Gym floor refinishing. So this is not like just varnishing. This would be the elementary gym floor and the small gym at the middle high school have not been stripped down to the wood and the lines off. So you have to do that every
15 years.
15 years. No. Hasn't been done in these gyms. I think
Much longer than that.
we're going on 20 years. So it's time. And it would be stripped right down and then resealed, restriped, and then sealed over the top. Art room sink replacements. Other work, we want to bring water up to the upper baseball and softball fields. Now, there is water up there, so we have a irrigation system, and we do have a spigot. The problem is you have to charge that system in order to get the water up there, and it takes about an hour to charge that irrigation system. So you have to charge the whole irrigation system in order to get that water up there. We're proposing 2 spigots, one by the softball field, one by the baseball field, so that we can water those fields down so they're not as hard, we can play on. Okay. Batting cage replacements, again, talked about refinishing the elementary, middle, high school gym floors, replacing the floors in the girls' locker room, the tile in the girls' locker room at the middle high school, overhead door replacements at the current garage. So really very minimal work at the current garage, just basically replacing the overhead doors through that whole complex. Those doors are in pretty bad shape. They're not super efficient, so we're looking at replacing the doors. The current bus garage would actually be used to store our plow trucks. Right now, if you go around campus, those plow trucks sit out in the weather. We would just right now be looking to make sure that those trucks are inside, and that's what we use the old bus garage for, current bus garage. Window repairs throughout the middle school. These are not window replacements. That's a huge price tag. And so we thought, you know what? These windows are not super efficient. What we can do is shore them up, reseal them, add some new hardware, and that'll make them more energy efficient without having that big price tag of replacing the windows in the entire complex. And then installing paint booths at the middle high school. So we had paint booths when we had our last fire inspection. The fire inspector said you can no longer use those paint booths because she felt that they weren't ventilated properly, they weren't ventilated to code. We need paint booths for our program, so we're proposing in this project that we put those paint booths in and ventilate them the way they need to.
So going back to the financial plan, one of the graphs here included in the newsletter that you received. We'll start with the building aid. I've already talked about that. In a perfect world, looking at 77%, but we'll use 73% for our estimates, again, to be conservative, so that we, in a worst case scenario, can still, put a financial plan together that states no tax impact. By the way, before I get ahead of myself, the prior project was $35 million that we proposed last December. This project is $27.7 million. So back to the pie graph, we will utilize the capital reserve for building projects. The district has a few different reserves. This specific reserve can be used for this purpose only. So we'll use $4.5 million of that reserve. And then the remaining part of the financing plan will be the retiring debt service. So we have on the expense side, we have our debt service payments, which are made up of different various past projects. And then on the revenue side, we have our building aid, which is the stability in our aid and be able to continue capital work. And as those old projects get retired, the new project kind of layers in to keep that consistent moving forward with the plan for 30 years for the transportation building, 15 for the rest of the capital project work. So again, those three pieces with the changes from the last project to this project make it no tax impact for the community. This table here is something that you may have seen before. It's something that we've included in the past as part of our budget presentations and the last capital project presentation. If you can't see it from where you are, this basically just says if you have a $100,000 home, 150, 200, 250, 300, whether you get star, enhanced, or basic, or not at all of those categories, we have zero tax impact for this project.
So as far as the timeline goes, if you remember from last December, it takes a while to get these projects completed. So we're here, November 2025, voting on a referendum next week. Then, if that referendum is approved, we move to the design phase, and we have to submit plans to SED. So we have to finalize, submit plans to SED. It takes a while for SED to review those. They'll get back to us, say, we like this, we need you to change this. And then construction would start in the fall of 2027. We're anticipating that construction would be completed around the summer of 2029. There was a question from a community member who said, you mean nothing is going to be done until 2029? No. We could start construction in the fall of 2027. So again, obviously you wouldn't want to replace boilers in December. What we would do is replace boilers when we can, when we know that we're not going to need heat. The PA clock system could be replaced. So there would be work that would probably be done before the summer of 2029, but we're anticipating that the entire project will be completed in by the summer of. So again, we're looking at a capital project vote next Tuesday, November 18th. That's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the middle high school guy. I just want to take some time to thank those members of our facilities committee. So Paul Hudson and Brandon Steele represented Bloomfield, Jared Rogers, a community member and parent who served on our committee, Rich Crowley, a community member. Rich had extensive background in building schools in Massachusetts and knows code. He actually teaches, he's a professor and teaches about building code and things like that. So Rich's input was invaluable. Bob Shank, community member. Bob was somebody who last project said this building is too expensive. It's too big. Bob also has extensive experience in the construction field. So Bob joined our committee and added great input into this. He actually also organized a trip up to the South Bristol town barns, and we visited the Bristol town barns. We took a look at that facility. Sarah Bradshaw, who's a community member. Sarah is a parent, community member, and also works in the world of school finance. Does not work for Bloomfield, but we thought, again, there were a lot of questions last time about the finances and how those work. So we thought Sarah would be a great add to the committee. Board members, Jim Spellman, Carolyn Neville, Ken Mathis, some administrators, David Adam, Director of Transportation, Mike Del Rosa. We really, again, worked to shrink this building down. There were things that Mike and David said we don't like not having those things. We said, sorry, you're going to have to go without them because we need to cut the cost of this building. And they were good. I think it was Mike's idea. We were initially looking at a larger two-bay garage, so we didn't have that third bay. And Mike said, I need to work on those smaller vehicles. Can you take a little bit out of the break room? Can you take a little bit out of the parts room and not, make the footprint of the building bigger, the square footage of the building bigger? And the architect said, yeah, we think we can do that. And again, that was an idea that Mike came up with. Fiscal advisors, so again, every step of the way, we have conversations with them and say, all right, we want no additional tax impact. How do we make this happen? Campus construction, who they're our project manager, Marathon Engineering. They did this civil engineering work and looked at that site that we're proposing to purchase if the project is approved. And then SWBR and the community. Again, hopefully people here can see that we use the feedback that we got from the last project. By the way, we will also have an exit poll survey when we do the vote this time as well, because we think that feedback is important. Obviously, we used it, and hopefully you see that. So, at this time, I'll open it up to questions or comments.
My name is Rosie Garlipo. I have two kids in the school district. First one is named Andy, and I know a lot of the board members are here, members from the garage, the drivers, and thank you everyone for your service. I just want to make 3 quick points. First, our country is drowning in debt. We have $38 trillion in debt at the federal level, and if we bring in at the federal level $5 trillion a year, and we spend $7 trillion a year. see the problem. Overspending is rampant in this country, and we are heading towards a financial cliff, and it starts at this level. So for that reason alone, I'm a hard no on this project. It's just too much spending. I'm trying to teach my kids to be financially responsible and not spend money they don't have, and I don't want to mortgage their future. So for anyone who wants their kids to stay in this state, vote against this spending, and we have to stop this across the state and across the country. Point one. Point two, I think the elephant in the room for me is that there is a law on the books in New York that requires conversion to EV school buses starting in 2027. So by July 1, 2027, if we need a bus, we can only buy an EV bus. And then by 2035, we have to have complete conversion of the fleet. And Andy has been a great advocate against this New York mandate. I was okay that I said that. And I agree that this mandate doesn't make sense for our state or our country, but it's a New York law. So I think the elephant in the room is, why are we building a $14 million bus garage without any public conversation or forum about the cost of EV, what it means for our community, is it safe, how does it really impact this bus garage? Because we're building it, like Andy said, so that we can pull an EV bus through it. And in the last vote, we were told that we needed we need to put the conduit in to show that we're facilitating the law, this new mandate, or we risk losing state aid. So I think that's a big thing that we should be talking about. And even in the form that New York gives the school every year to file, there's a question that says, have you put a proposition regarding zero emission busing to your people in your community? And our answer this year was no, we have not. We have not had an open discussion, and we've not talked about it. We have to understand what it's going to cost down the road, and it's tens of millions of dollars. This is an unfunded mandate that the government is imposing on us, and it is going to raise your taxes down the road. And on the flip side, if we don't, now we're in a really bad spot, because if we don't facilitate the mandate, we're at risk of losing state aid. So for everyone who really likes that 77%, we're at risk of losing that by not putting in the conduit now. So we need to press pause on this whole thing and have a conversation and understand what the risks are on both sides, the cost of what it's going to cost down the road. And if we don't put the conduit in now, do we risk losing state aid because we're not facilitating the mandate? And there is a waiver that we can apply for. You can get up to two-year extensions on these requirements. But if you read the law, it says the commissioner will weigh what steps you've taken to facilitate their mandate. And they're going to look at us and say, oh, look, in your proposal last year, you wanted to put in the conduit. And then this one that you just voted through, if we voted through, you're not. So are we really facilitating the mandate? And just zooming out, what does this community want? I'm against it, but other people might want it. And it's something that should be talked about first before voting on a bus garage when we got this law requiring us to convert to EV in the next 2 years. So it just does, this order of operations makes no sense. Stop. And then my third point is, in no rational universe does it make sense when your district is declining in population 2 to 3% a year, does it make sense to buy property and build a $14 million building on it? Does not make rational sense. So, but thank you for your service, and thank you everyone for your effort.
So a couple things. One, we need a bus garage. And if we don't build this garage, we're asking our mechanics to continue to work in a garage that's just not sufficient. If, again, to play your scenario out, if we do have to purchase an EV bus, if we're forced to, now you're putting infrastructure in a location that we clearly are saying just doesn't work. So if the community would like a conversation, and you know, because I've had this conversation with you about EV buses, I don't think a capital improvement project is the place to have that. We do every year put a bus proposition forward as part of the budget. So that would be a great opportunity to have that conversation. You are correct. I am advocating heavily against this mandate. I don't believe, I don't believe that a community should be forced to do something. I think a community needs to have the ability to do what's best for them. If at some point the community feels and it makes sense fiscally to buy an EV bus, great. If it doesn't, then I don't think we should have to. There is a waiver, and I have been active in advocating and asking about what does it take to get the waiver. There are lots of things that qualify you. One is you have to do the NYSERDA study, which is the law, and we've done that. So we've done it. We're being told we qualify. Other questions? Yes.
So my question is, in 10 years from now, electric vehicles have to go back to the dealership to be worked on. 10 years from now, are we even going to have a maintenance shop that are going to work on these buses? Or is this building going to be not used anymore? I mean, what is and has the cost analysis been done, the cost of having the people to work on here? Or if the only thing that we can do here is like change tires of us having buses go to places that just do tires? Because I'm sure we have great mechanics, but are they going to be able to work on these new buses? And are we going to need a bus garage for them to work on?
So, yeah, so, sure.
So yes, to answer your question, yes, we do need it. And the reason being, our buses right now, every 45 days have to be inspected, every single one. Anything is DOT inspected. So every vehicle we have in our fleet has to come in and be inspected. Every 6 months, they're DOT. Once a year, the brakes all have to be disassembled, cleaned, measured, and reported down to the DOT inspector. So that all has to be done. And they go through all those records every time they come in here. We have inspections every 3 weeks pretty much. So, yes.
But is that going to be done on electric buses?
Yeah.
Because the electric
The
buses,
chassis is the same
the electric buses, the electric motors work as brakes.
to a point.
Yes,
But there's still brakes, there's tires, everything, and there are a lot of other things that go on it that have to be inspected.
Is there enough work to keep
Yes.
full-time mechanics on?
Yes.
Or is it cost?
The cost, the problem is right now, so say if we have a small issue, like we have these off-manifold issues on our school buses now. I just set one up. It might be a month and a half when we get that bus back. We don't have that many spare buses. We can be without a bus that long. They're short on mechanics, big time. So anytime anything goes up there, it's a long time coming back. And yes, we can be trained to be certified to work on electric buses. So everything we do here, we do in-house. The only major things get sent out if we don't have the time to do it. Because myself and the other mechanic, we drive daily. Because we're short drivers like every other school district. So it's imperative that we have a place to work on.
Yes, so one of the people, he's not on the slide, but Billy Harvey is a salesman for Leonard Bus. We don't buy buses from Leonard Bus. Billy Harvey is actively advocating against EV buses. And so when we started looking at this project, we said, somebody who knows electric buses would be a great person to kind of consult with. So again, in talking with Billy, he's saying, yes, you're still going to need to work on electric buses. Can you do everything that needs to be done on an electric bus? No. But will there be enough work to keep a mechanic busy? Yes.
Well, I think the perspective is we rarely, David and transportation, we rarely work on the diesel engine. Mike rarely gets into a diesel engine. I was at Marcus Whitman School for 20 years as a director over there. We don't work on diesel engines. So you compare that with the electric, there's going to be certain things that we don't do, absolutely. But all the manufacturers provide training to our mechanics, free of charge because you buy their buses. So 90% of what could be done will be done in-house. And just like the diesel engines. We don't do that. We don't tear them apart. We don't put them back together because they work.
Yes.
How does this, my name's Jake, my kids are in the school, but how does this project at this point in the age of this school and similar towns to this age and some kids, less kids in the school district, but 30 years ago, nobody would have predicted Victor would be as explosive as it is. Like, what resources do you have to compare the 20-year projection or the 10 or the 15-year outlook on a project like this compared to other districts in a similar situation in other parts of New York State?
So no district is building an EV bus garage. Most districts, Victor is a great example, have completed recent garage projects, again, because when you think about all that happens in a garage, that's one building that you want to be up to date. Victor just passed last year a $99 million building project. Nothing in that building project was EV related. Gananda just approved a capital improvement project last year that included a new bus garage. Nothing in that project is EV related. So essentially, when and if you have to buy an EV bus, what has to happen, just like any bus proposition, that's voted on by your community. You put that proposition up, but with an EV bus, it's not just the bus. You also have to put up the charger and the infrastructure work. You can't buy the charger without the bus. You can't technically do the infrastructure work. That's why we were just looking to lay the conduit. You can't put the electricity in until you have the bus. They won't allow you to do that. So I think every district is kind of in our boat. There are some districts who have taken the leap. So Fairport is looking to, I don't know, fully electrify, but they're buying a ton of EV buses, and they're taking advantage of the grant money that's out there. We have access to that grant money if we want to if we need to put the infrastructure in. Again, because we did that NYSERDA study, we do have access to that grant money that would put the infrastructure in for free, which is why we were proposing the conduit. But again, if you remember the last project, the buses were parked in a chevron pattern, and the charging stations were going to go up the middle. So this project, buses are back of the lot, and you could easily put in the conduit without having to rip up any parking lot. So we've tried to think about those things. Naples has 2 EV buses, and Kevin Swartz, their superintendent, is also, even though they have 2 EV buses, a huge advocate against EV buses. The great thing about Naples is they've been able to track the data. They have learned that it's 70 cents more expensive to run an EV bus than it is to run a diesel or gas bus. They also know that when the temperature gets to a certain level, that EV bus is pretty much useless because of that. And again, we've been advocating hard against this mandate. In fact, I just sent an email today to Robert Zayas on Friday night, and Saturday morning I was at a State Rural Schools Association Board of Directors meeting. And Robert Zayas, who's the director of the New York State High School Athletic Association, came and talked to us, and he said, talk to me about athletics and rural perspective. And, athletic mergers came up, and ticket prices came up. But I asked the question, has the New York State High School Athletic Association had any conversations about the potential impact that EV buses would have on athletics? He said, no, what do you mean? I said, well, winter sports. Temperature during the winter is pretty low, and if the bus doesn't work, how are we getting kids to basketball contests? In the Adirondack region, you could be 100 miles, from where you're playing your basketball game. And he said, never thought about that. Send me information. So I just sent him an email today with all that information outlined, with the cost of the buses. And I'm asking him to advocate with us, the superintendents in this region recognize that this is a mandate that is just not sustainable for a lot of reasons. So again, we need that garage, whether it's got EV buses going through it or diesel or gas buses going through it. And we're prepared if we have to meet that mandate. But again, I can't meet it unilaterally. That has to be a vote to the. Yeah.
What, were there projected costs of operation on the new building as well, and how does that get built into an ongoing budget and thus tax assessment?
Yeah. So there is now, and I know because you're in construction, a law on the books that beginning January 1st, every new build has to be fully electric. We're hearing there is a waiver for that. I'm hopeful. I can't guarantee. I can tell you we'll apply for that waiver, but I can't guarantee that we'll get it. If the project passes in the timeline, it'll be before January 1st. So my thought is we can say we want to apply for the waiver because this project was passed prior to when the mandate goes into. But obviously, this new building will be much more energy efficient than the current project, for sure. Yeah.
Piggybacking off the decline of students, I see a lot of buses go by my house, and they're only half full of us. A lot of parents bring their kids to school. So with those numbers, really, it doesn't make sense to put this much money into a building when there's not a lot of kids on these buses.
So I hear a lot about declining enrollment, and what I can tell you is I'm a small town graduate. I graduated from Belfast Central School, 500 students, K-12 in 1989. We had a bus garage. Those buses went to all different corners of the district. Today, Belfast Central School District is one of the school districts that are a third smaller than us, and they have an enrollment K-12 of 300. So we're squarely in the middle. So about a third of the school districts in the state are larger than us. A third of the school districts in the state are smaller than us. We're Class C school, very similar in size to Gananda, Byron Virgin, Lyons, Leroy. We'll still need to bus kids. That's a mandate. That's a state law. We have to bus.
So, the phenomenon of seeing a bus half empty or half full really is a product of where anybody lives in the district. Unless you live across the street here, or you live across the street from the high school, you'll never see a bus full. And we don't fill a bus. 65 passenger buses with 65 high school kids in it would be most uncomfortable, let's put it that way. But most of our buses have about 35 to 40 students on it. When it's loaded to its plan, I can't account for the number of people who bring their kids into school. On a given day, they might be or may not be coming in. We also have to factor in the distance that we travel on a day. So we're kind of bound by dismissal times at both places, arrival times, and how long a bus run can be. That determines how many kids you can pick up. Certainly, out in west-south corner of Bloomfield, there's not a lot of kids. There's not a lot of kids over there. So it gets to be a challenge. But that bus driver drives a lot of miles to pick up those kids. And that takes, you drive miles, that takes time. So there's a balancing act that you have to do there. We have a lot of special needs kids. You know, I've got 3 buses that go to Red Jacket with less than a handful of kids because of the needs of those kids and what we have to do. Those are determined not by me as a transportation director in loading the bus. Those are determined by the needs of those kids. We have to adjust to those things.
Other questions?
Yeah. When you replace the boilers, can you do it with the gas fired or they have to be electric?
No, so new builds have to be electric. So any existing build, you're able to continue with gas or whatever's most cost effective.
And then the last project, you were talking about lifting a lift for an electric bus. Are you addressing that with this new build, a
Yeah.
heavier lift?
Yep.
And that would lift the electric bus?
Yes. Yep, so we would want to make sure that we didn't put a lift in that wouldn't be able to do double duty. So, again, obviously you don't put a lift in just for an electric bus, because right now we don't have electric buses.
Right.
But you want to put a lift in that's hefty enough to be able to service both gas, diesel, and electric. Yep. And again, these guys have been great. We talked about what they need, what their needs are in a garage. Yes.
Andy, I want to thank you for this talk, the long thought area that your team has. And this is just a question, really. But my understanding in New York State is that in the last 10 years, we've suffered outmigration of 2 million people who left the state and 1 million who come in. So the population of New York State is declining quite steadily, dramatically. I did a little graph of the enrollment per class for this year, and it shows the same downward curve. The upper grades, you have a certain level of students, and at the beginning grades, it's significantly lower. All of which suggests to me that we're on a downward curve in terms of the number of students that will be bused going forward, whether you use big buses with a few kids in them or small buses full of kids. So my question to you is, does this facility that you are proposing to build, how have you projected the quantity of buses and the size of buses to cope with this decline of student body and the degree of emptiness of the buses?
So again, I think we're a long way off from reducing the fleet. When we do budgets, we look at everything. We look at, is there a way to use our facilities like we have in a way that would generate revenue, offset budget losses in state aid, et cetera. We've looked at, right now we double trip. Naples does not double trip. So we've looked at, is there a point where the elementary school and the middle high school have the same schedule? Similar schedules, not exact, but similar to what Naples does. Even if you did that, you'd still need the same amount of buses. Because again, right now, we're putting elementary kids on those buses and busing them, and then we're turning around and picking up high school, middle school kids and putting them on the buses and coming back. So if we get to a point where, it makes fiscal sense to look at single tripping versus double tripping, you'd still need the same amount of buses. And I'll also say, and again, this is one of our advocacy points against EV buses. We met, the Ontario County Superintendents met with Ontario County Economic Developer Ryan Davis. And Ryan presented some data that basically said grid capacity is at its max right now. In fact, the Victor area is booming. I think our rural Bloomfield folks will tell you we're ripe for growth as a community, but developers aren't looking at us because of the lack of infrastructure, right? But if that came in, I think you would see a boom. This is one of the few areas in the state that is growing. Bloomfield is not, because there's no housing. So that conversation basically was around, the governor is pushing an EV bus mandate. The governor is also pushing a housing development program that she wants to see. Those two are in direct conflict if you're competing for power. So what we have said is, we want this EV bus mandate repealed so that we can focus on economic development in our area. So again, if that happens, I do think you're going to see this school district.
I think my concern is that Bloomfield isn't growing, there's businesses leaving, there's houses up for sale, and those are, it's integral in absorbing the tax base and keeping things low. My concern with the mailer is that ballot resolution language that's on the back, because I felt that's contradicted in all the graphics that, highlight, oh, looks like things for free, and it's, we still have more homes going up for sale or say going into foreclosure because it's just so expensive. It's very expensive here per student based on, like, if you look around at other small school districts, we're pretty high. And then if there's businesses not coming in, like, we really should be focusing on growing Bloomfield. I think I'm concerned as a single mom with 2 kids in the district that I'm going to be taxed right out of here because yes, the student enrollment is very concerning, and it's like, I don't know if I can keep taking a hit because there's going to be higher tax assessments, there's going to be costs are increasing at every turn, food, gas, payment. It's like, it's becoming crazy. So it's like, at what point is this really at no cost to taxpayers, and for how long? And what is the frequency of the next capital expansion project? Like, how soon will that be coming up, the next one? I want to see this community endure and do well and grow, but I just get really nervous because are we looking at the social demographics of the people that make up this community and their medium incomes? Can they afford to keep taking on another project and it's got all these promises, and what if something doesn't fall through and we are on the hook? Because that's what the ballot language makes it come.
So I'm going to let Scott address your question about the ballot language and is this project going to raise taxes? But I do want to touch on a couple points. First, we have worked really hard to try to not increase taxes as a school district. When I started in 2018, the true value tax rate was over $21 per thousand. It's now down to $14 per thousand. The last 2 budgets have increased, budget to budget increase, have averaged 0.37% increase budget to budget. Now, I recognize that the tax levy increased 2%, but the budget to budget increase, so in other words, what we're operating on year to year only increased 0.37% on average. I don't think you're going to find another school district in the state that has a lower budget to budget increase than we do. We are, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud to say it, and it's not just me. When we talk with people, they talk about Bloomfield. They talk about the things that we have done, innovations like leasing buildings out. We're now talking with BOCES about becoming the IB school for the region and tuitioning kids in to the IB program. That's a program that not a lot of school districts have. And because we have it and we're running it, we can tuition kids into that program through BOCES, which is yet another revenue stream that we could potentially have. So we are actively looking for ways to generate revenue to keep taxes down. We hear These projects, though, are super important, and Scott will get into it. And I know Sarah is well versed in this. But you want to keep your debt level so that you don't have a drop in debt and then have to make that up in the local level.
Just to add to those statistics there about budget increases, for the 24-25 budget, we increased by 0.52%. The average of the 5 school districts around us was 3%. For 25-26, this current year, we went up by 0.22%. The average of the 5 school districts around us was 4.06%. Again, true value tax rate 2018 to 19 was $21.68 per thousand. This current year, it's $14.36 per thousand.
Scott, what are those 5 districts you're talking about? Just out of curiosity, just thinking we have Victor and HFL and Canandaigua surrounding us, and they're much bigger.
Red Jacket, Canandaigua, Honeoye, Naples, Victor.
Okay, thank you.
And I didn't put that out. I don't want to throw other districts under the bus with that if you ask specifically.
No, I was just curious how they compared
We can-
size-wise when you're
We
talking
can
about.
cut that out of there.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want any of my colleagues doing it.
Yeah. So take a look at the FAQ on our website. We've gotten a lot of great questions over the last few weeks, and this one about the resolution was one of them, and so we did add it as an FAQ document. So the resolution's written by our bond counsel. They're the people that make sure that when we go to bond a project, we've done all the steps that we need to do in order for that borrowing to happen. And so, yes, it does say that we levy taxes to support this project, but going back to the pie graph that I went over, that's referring to that 11% of the retiring debt service. So we collect taxes to heat this room, to pay that 4th grade teacher, to run our sports programs, to do everything that we do, and included in that is our debt service. So we're going to continue to keep that debt service even with that retiring debt piece. So yes, we're going to continue to collect taxes to put towards that project, but the way we structured it is so that there's no impact to the tax base. And as we keep that consistent moving forward, your other part, your question about when's the next project, it's usually around every 5 years or so. This is a large one for Bloomfield. The last one was 10.4, I think. But what's in that project will go back to the committee and back to the BCS and the list of the needs and wants and all of those pieces. But by keeping the debt flat, we will have the ability to make the improvements that we need then, in addition to what we are doing now. And that's why we've structured it the way that we've structured it. If we, did not keep it consistent, we're losing all that funding, and we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. Just a real quick piece about state aid. We're focused on building aid. This current year for building aid, we're projected to get around $1.6 million. That's only 14% of the state aid that this district is going to get. So we're going to get around 11.8 million. So other than building aid, we are going to accept from the state over $10 million in state aid. And that's in the form of foundation aid, BOCES aid for educating our most needy students, transportation aid. This is all our aid package. So as we're focused in on the aidability of the project, we're talking about 14% of what we will, receive as a district. That 11.8 in state aid comparatively to our tax levy, it's very interesting. The tax levy is 11.5, so it's almost exactly the same. So just wanted to add a little perspective about the building aid portion of our state aid package, comparatively to the whole, look at it, the whole package. But it's definitely the FAQ on the website, I think, can be very helpful for a lot of those kind of questions. We've really worked hard on that from the last project to this project to the questions we're getting asked. That's a great question, and it's the FAQ. I suggest taking a look at it.
Yes.
Hey, I'm Paul Hudson. I'm the president of Grove Bloomfield.
want to give a little perspective on why this group endorses this project. First time around last year, we were a little ambiguous. I'm going to say our group was evenly split. Half the people wanted to do it, half the people didn't want to do it. The people that like environmental causes and were concerned about climate change, said, yeah, let's go get the EV buses going. And the rest of the people are going, gee, my kids have to go all the way to South Seneca, and then they're going to have to charge up over there in order to get back. So we were ambiguous the first time. We feel that the school people have done a good stewardship job, the school board and administration, in terms of handling money, in terms of the aesthetics of what we've got going here. For example, one of the original thoughts was to put the school bus garage up behind the baseball field. And Bloomfield, we didn't think that was a good idea, so we went and talked to the school board, and you can see where we are now. It's off campus where it should be. I was on the school board 40-some years ago, and I went to my training, my indoctrination, and the instructor said, what's the most important thing you think that we need to do? And I said, it's to educate the kids, give them a good education. And the instructor goes, no, that's not right. It's to keep them safe. The most important thing is to keep the kids safe. You think about it. I think it is. You watch TV, you see some of the things that go on. It's to keep kids safe. So we're very glad that the bus garage is going to be moved off campus. It's not very far away. That emulates what they do with Canandaigua, what they do with Honeywell. It's a smarter solution. The other thing is fiscal responsibility. And if you say no to this, there are things, there are 300 items, maybe more, on the list of things that get looked at by the facilities committee that need to be done. So they get prioritized. A, they're urgent and important. B, they're important but not urgent. C, they're not important and not urgent. Okay? So they go through stuff. The A things have to be done. These buildings are 60 and 80 years old, roughly. So some things have to be done, some big things. So we can either do them, it's not free, it's not fair to say that it's free, but we can do it without impact on your taxes for the next 3 years. Or we can spend millions of dollars and you can pay 100 cents on the dollar instead of paying 25 cents on the dollar. So for those reasons, Bloomfield is very much behind this project. We'd like to see it go through, and appreciate the concerns and appreciate the good job that we think has been done.
Andy, I don't think there's anybody in this room who can't say that you guys have done a marvelous job, basically. Just with this project of the school system altogether. This town has run really fiscally tight. And that goes into stated that here very well. I think what maybe some people are missing is the fact that we need a new bus garage. The bus garage is it's a way to run. It's the end of its life. And you got to get it off campus. For safety reasons, you cannot have buses with kids. A bus repair facility with kids. Because I built 13 schools in my life. None of them have had a scenario like you're experiencing right now. And when they did, they had to fix it. So getting it off campus is a right thing. And whether you have one kid in the school district or 15,000, you're going to still need the bus. Doesn't matter how many kids there are in the school. And the garage that you're building right now is about a minimum garage you can possibly get. It's not the smallest garage for one kid. It's not the biggest garage for 15,000 kids. It's the perfect size garage for where we are right now. And even if we lose kids in this district, it's still the perfect size. Because we might get kids. Victor is pretty much built out in this place that the developers are eyeballing right here. it, and so, no crystal ball, but I think that this is the perfect size facility, and away from where it is right now is the right fiscal thing to do. And it's the bare bones facility. And you can fix electric vehicles in this garage if you need to. But it's a garage. It will fix all kinds of vehicles. And the maintenance people that we have on staff are equipped to handle that. So, this is just like, we own these buildings, the public owns these buildings, the town owns these buildings. It's no different than if you need a new tire in your car, we need a new garage. You just can't go driving with a bad tire. That's going to happen. So, you do need a garage, and I think that everything that the committee has done, it answered all the concerns from the town, but we just needed a new garage, and I think that's what people are forgetting. No matter what the winds of politics are going on at the national level, spending at the national, everybody is experiencing higher costs. You've shown that this thing is coming in fiscally responsible as you possibly can get at the local level. And I don't think you can do better than that. Thank you for all you've done.
Francis, did you have? Yes.
I guess for my own peace of mind, the bus garage cost, what's a bus garage cost, whether it's off-site, on-site, within reason. The only difference is the purchase of the land off-site, in my mind, right? Does that sound right? So what did we purchase the land for, is I guess is what I want to know.
So.
Or going to purchase it for.
Yeah, so it was 17,400 an acre, but it's an aidable purchase. So we'll get aid on that.
So I believe
Smart deal.
right, well, I think the roadway, like, there was a lot of pieces, not just the building of the bus garage, that fed into the cost of the last project. One was feeding into the trip to the field that needed to be addressed because of where the bus garage was going. So there was a lot of extra kind of, not because of the building, but because of where the building was going to be.
Right.
So the purchase of the land kind of alleviated that.
That, and then the field work was so expensive, so to take the field work out of the project was a big savings as well.
Yeah. And again, as Sarah noted, there's already a road there. So you don't have to build a road. All you're building is a driveway and parking. So it saved a ton of site costs. Yes.
So, as you alluded to, my name is Sarah. I have kids in the school district, but I also work in the industry. When I found out about the project, I reached out. We don't work with the district, but I wanted to know just a few questions. One was the aidability of the project, which is how many dollars are you spending that we're going to get that aid back on? Again, just wanting to gauge what we were spending our money on, so I could comfortably back the project or not back the project and have more questions. Bus garages are really not built. SED is the state education department, very particular, and when they say they submit the project for approval to SED, that's all the details of the project. They're looking for code, but they're also looking to see if it's an aidable scope item. So if you submit a bus garage that has covered parking for the buses that you may or may not have to purchase, right? That wouldn't be aidable. SED would say, you can build it, we're not giving you aid on it. If you build a bus garage too big for what you need, if you're going to put many offices or different spaces in there that are not needed per their eye, in those, then the aidability of that bus garage reduces. So it's not 100% aidable. It was confirmed that it is fully aidable. So in SED's eyes, there is no extra kind of space within there. There's no parking that's covered. They don't believe that you need to cover your buses, so they're not. So again, SED does look at this stuff. It's a good bus garage size and responsible for, again, not blocking anything with EV, so we're not repeating expenses, not having to redo work, but it's being supportive of kind of that middle piece there. And addressing doing that cost now with declining enrollment or not, or
potentially ballooning a project down the road if you're not addressing things. Again, that's why there is that building condition survey. Your buildings are looked at every 5 years. If you don't continually kind of take a look at your buildings and do those projects, you end up with a balloon project that is very costly and hard to get approved. In the meantime, you are dealing with a lot of leaks in your roof. You're dealing with sometimes heat in your buildings that you have to cancel school for. So there's a lot of issues with ballooning a project and not really addressing kind of the consistency of bringing these projects on board. But I appreciate being involved. I think the team's done a great job looking and addressing the district.
I do have a question about the funding. This may be a Mr. Donnelly question. As far as retiring the debt service, it's, what I'm understanding, it's $27.7 million for the entire project. About $3 million of that is from retiring debt service. Now, to me, that's about 25% of our annual tax levy. I look at it that way. How is that spread out over upcoming years? How do we get that $3 million that we're talking about to fund this? Is that, I see that as when I go to Canandaigua National Bank next year, some of that money I'm paying next year will be going to this project. Is that correct?
And I'm going to ask Andrew to answer that.
Okay.
That's all right. Andrew's from Fiscal Advisors.
Yeah.
Helped us with the project.
Yeah, Andrew Schreier from Fiscal Advisors. So that 11% is encapsulating falling debt service for a number of years. I think it's 13 years that the $3 million number that you would come up with equates to. So on an annual basis, it's not, you know, a $3 million number that you're looking at. It's a handful of dollars. And there's tiered step downs. There's a couple step downs. So we structure the debt and the local share to match that, so that, as Scott was talking about, the number that's going into the tax cap equation to keep the levy level for these purposes, we accomplish that.
Okay, so it's spread over numerous years.
It's spread over a number of years. Yeah.
Okay, but that would be money that we still have to pay into the system. It's not sitting in a reserve fund. That's,
so it's
those are taxes we're still on the hook for.
Correct, and that's the piece that basically Scott was talking about, that you are levying that portion to get back to that current level of what's going into the cap equation for the current fiscal year.
Okay. That does yield another kind of general comment, just a district-wide comment. The one, first of all, my name's Martin Snyder. I have a son who's participated in the football program this season. And I have kind of a general thought just about the transportation in general that kind of factors into this. You know, I see that money as being money that we're going to be paying out year after year that, you know, could be a savings to us, but it will be going towards this transportation center approved and towards the facilities. The concern I have is we've seen the transportation diminish over the past few years. We're putting this money into the capital side of it, but we used to have transportation so that we could have football programs, we could have different programs with different districts. The one thing that personally hit me, and I know it probably hit a lot of people this year, is the fact that with football program, it's 20 miles away. So it's 20 miles there, 20 miles back, 200 miles a week. I put my son on the road 200 miles per week, 10 weeks a year. That's 2,000 miles that are going onto my car, transporting other kids on behalf of the district because the district isn't providing transportation. So we're putting money into this capital project, but we're not transporting kids. And I can see the argument, well, okay, the education side is a priority, sports is secondary. And I've heard the argument that, well, you know, we had a swimming program in Victor, we only had 2 kids. Okay, I can see why we wouldn't run a bus to Victor. But in this situation, we're putting all this money into the facility, but we've backed off in the past 2 years. We used to have transportation over to Rushville. Now it's me. So my car is going over to Rushville. I'm dropping off my check at Canandaigua National Bank on the same day, and it hurts. It took a good amount out of my personal budget. I know it's something that doesn't impact everyone, but that's the case with a lot of these sports programs that we have. And for instance, I know Honeywell. The one thing I noted last year is, you know, we partnered with Honeywell for lacrosse. They sent a bus over here with their kids on Memorial Day. And we couldn't even get transportation across Canandaigua Lake for our students who go over there. So it's one thing that weighs on me. I know it's not something that hits everyone in the room, but it's something that, in general, it hit me, it hit other parents, and that's, yeah, it's over $1,000 right there, wear and tear on the vehicle, in addition to my taxes that I have to pay in the same month. So that's just something I have to consider when when I go to vote. But I appreciate this forum with getting this information, been very upfront with the information. I appreciate that, but that's one of my main concerns is, we're putting this money into the capital part, but we're neglecting transporting the kids in those cases.
And that's the problem, Marty. We wish we could. The problem is, we don't have enough kids to field a team, obviously. But we still want to give them these opportunities because these kids want to play these sports. And when you have multiple programs going on, we don't even have drivers to be able to get them out there. Is that correct, David? I mean,
One more
It's
piece
one
of the
more
puzzle.
Yeah.
so we struggle with that. What do we do? Do we not have the program for the kids? And there are parents that say, no problem, and I get it. It costs money to run your vehicle. It's wear and tear, absolutely. But, there's the parents want their kids to go to those programs, and then we try to facilitate it, can't always do it.
Mm-hmm.
And drivers are a big problem in all districts. Every district is having problems getting drivers. You've probably gone in Victor and seen their signs out by the stores on 96. They're begging, they're giving bonuses to get drivers.
And actually, Victor is not transporting kids for their school program. So I believe track parents had to transport their own kids.
But I understand that.
Program.
It's just that the kids want,
Transportation's tough. This one is particularly tough because of when the bus leaves, it conflicts with dismissal.
Which I understand that, logistics. But I guess being more concise about what I was trying to say is that I see that money that we're going to be paying out year after year that could go towards bus drivers. We could give bus drivers a salary that might be a little more enticing to drive a bus. But I understand the need for the facility as well. But I just want to put that out there because that's something that really, it weighs on my family budget. And I had to cut back because that's, all that gas, 2,000 miles worth of gas I had to pay just to help transport district kids.
Yes.
Brandon Steele, I was one of the community representatives on the project here. Just a couple comments. I'm also on Bloomfield, so for the last few years I've been concerned. I have 4 kids that go to the school, and I know that as the census declines, those opportunities start to drop for what my kids are able to participate in. I hope that once they graduate, they'll be able to stay within the area. My wife grew up and she went to this school. Her parents live just down the road. It's a community that has a close family feel to it, and it's something that I feel like would be great to allow my kids to still be able to live here if at all possible. I know there's been some concerns about the declining census. Looking at Victor, looking at Canandaigua, looking at Farmington, those areas have all been growing immensely. When I drive down to the store, I just see suburbia to my right and to my left. And that's something that, I think it will eventually come to Bloomfield whether we want it or not. And that's why I got into Grow Bloomfield, because when I go through Farmington, it just kind of makes me sad. Because it's just like this, I don't want, hundreds of house development just to get dropped in the middle of Bloomfield. But I also recognize that, we do need some modest, mindful growth in order to sustain what we have here, to keep this special place, growing and to support our businesses and our community and our farmers. And that's why, all it takes is one farmer to eventually get the right price tag and say, well, that's a good enough price, I'm ready to retire. And suddenly we don't have as much say because a big developer just bought a big chunk of land and they're going to start building as many houses as they can. So that's why I was in Grow Bloomfield, because we're trying to make sure that we can connect the right developer with the right piece of land in a way that best serves Bloomfield's interests. Additionally, there are concerns with people leaving New York State. Ontario County is projected to have population growth 3% over the next 20 years. I think sometimes those numbers that look at downstate, where people might be leaving more, those don't really apply here. This is a growing area, and we have a bright future of growth ahead of us as far as Ontario County and this general region is concerned. I know there's concerns about fiscal responsibility with this project. I am, I'm a very cheap person. When I went to school down in Ithaca, I was sleeping in the back of my Honda Civic to save money. I had my upper body in the trunk and my legs sticking out the front. I took out a $70,000 loan to get my education down there, but I also saved where I could in ways that people would say, that's kind of crazy. Being a part of this project, I really do care about the numbers, and I think with COVID and with tariffs, this is just the cost of building a bus garage. It's not like we're trying to be extravagant. It's just everything's incredibly expensive, and we're projecting out the price, not just for this year, but for the next 4 or 5 years, for how long it takes to get this project built. And these things they cost a lot. But luckily, we have that aid coming from the state. We can access our tax dollars from the state to help so that that whole burden isn't coming right down on top of our community. Because if something big breaks and we have to fix it, that's a lot for us to sustain. So if there's a time to do it, the time is now. Additionally, I think building this garage is going to set us up. I hope that reason wins out, and in 10 years, we're not going to be having this electric bus garage situation forced down our throats. But if that is the case, building this new garage, we have lots of space. I can't imagine trying to cram a bunch of chargers into the current location where our bus garage is. There's just not space to do it. It's already, when I come here for performing art, like a choir or a band, they come. One time, I was like, I guess I'm parking really close to this bus here because there's just no space anywhere else. And I think that's a concern that this school is the heart of activities and what draws our community together. And people just, it's hard for people to participate and be a part of those things because there's just no space in order to have people come together here. And so getting that bus garage moved out of the way, that's going to open up a lot of parking and help with those community events that really draw people together and make this a special place to be. So, yeah, I think that's the main points that I wanted to make. It was a pleasure being on the committee. I know sometimes it was tough. I work up in Rochester and I was driving as fast as I could to get down here for the meetings. I care about this community, and I think this project is something that is, whatever it costs here, this $27 million, the benefits that we get as a community will far outweigh what this will cost because we're educating the future leaders of our community, the farmers, the business owners, the leadership. This will allow us to better develop our children and to help them be successful as they start the road of share.
I just had a quick question. Mark Wellstone, I've got 3 daughters. One I got through school, 2 almost at the finish line, and I went here and I'm turned a lot of years ago. I graduated. But I just have a question. It's pretty much for Scott. The state building aid amount, I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, that's money that's already coming out of people that live in New York's pocket, and that's just going into a big pot, and it's getting spent. So we're basically putting our hand up saying, we got a project here, we need something done. And if we say no to this money's not going to go back in our pocket, it's just going to go somewhere else. Am I right in saying that? Tell me if I'm wrong.
I can't say that you're wrong.
Sorry. Good question. Thank you.
Just looking for our share.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing too. I'm Chad Ayers. I've been a lifetime resident of Bloomfield. I've worked at Naples now for 26 years. They had a bus garage about 10 years ago that they replaced. Same exact age. It's fallen apart. Similar to what ours is. I have experience being in the bus garage. My father was the director of transportation here. I taught driver's ed here for a few years. So I know the inside and out of the bus garage, and I know what shape it's in. Knowing that and getting it off campus, we are one of the very, very few districts around that still has a bus garage on campus. getting it off campus, building a modest building like what you guys have right now planned. I applaud everybody on the committee because the last go around, I wasn't on board. And you guys listened to the community and scaled everything back. And I think you've done right by what people have said and the feedback that people have given you. So I think it's something, again, if we want to keep a community going, we have an opportunity to, again, have a fully or hugely aided project. If we turn this down, just to piggyback on what you said, it's not like they're going to say, okay, hey, Greg, great on you, here's your money back. It doesn't happen like that. The money's going to go somewhere else. So I think we would be turning down a huge opportunity.
I got a question. With this bus garage and this budget, all right, say the bus garage, just for giggles, is $14 million. Say at the end of the project it comes in at $16 million. Where's that $2 million come up? Where's that, is there fluff in that?
So when we build these projects, and again, I'll have committee members jump in once, but you're building a project, again, when you look at that timeline, you're costing out a project that's going to be done in 2029.
Right.
So when you put the project together, you factor in cost escalations, you kind of lean on people like Campus Construction who does this all over the state, who knows kind of what those escalations are going to look like, and they give you that estimate. When we approve, if this project is approved, you're approving the dollar amount spent. So if this project comes in higher, so the next phase, this is an approved project. Once SED comes back and says, you're good to go with this project, then we go out to bid. And we take those bids, and if those bids come in low, that's great. If those bids come in high, then we have to figure out, all right, this is the maximum amount we can spend. What can we do to make sure that we get under or at what we need to spend?
Well, I come
Does that
from
make sense?
construction myself,
Yeah.
so I understand a lot of this.
Yeah.
Some people don't, but there's always them hiddens.
Yep.
You know, it's like when they're building a new stadium up in Buffalo.
Yes.
You know, it's gone way over their budget. Somebody's got to come up with that extra money.
So cost escalations and contingencies, because you're absolutely right. In every project, there are inevitably things that pop up that you didn't count on, right? You didn't count on that, there was asbestos in a wall or something like that, and that, it makes the project more expensive. So again, those are built in to the cost estimates. And again, community is approving the dollar amount, like can't spend more than this. And if it comes in higher, then we have to go back to work as a committee to say, all right, what is coming out? How do we address these needs in a different way? Because we can't this way.
So you can guarantee you can't go over budget.
Correct. You can't spend more than 27.
By law. To give you an example, last spring you guys approved purchase of bus Suburban. We were over built out date on the Suburban was passed, so we had to wait, got the new price on the Suburban. It cost more than the other one. Surprise, surprise, right? I mean, 6 to 8 months later, you get a price on a vehicle, it's more expensive. We had to go back to the bus dealer and take some options off the buses that we want on those buses, but we had to take some options off to get down below that dollar. We didn't have a choice of saying, oh, well, it costs another $4,000 or $5,000. We'll just pay that. We can't. We have to go down below that. This project, the same as that. The new buses that we have are missing a couple. Not, certainly not an option around safety, because whoever said that, you know, what's the role of the school board? It's what I preach all the time to my staff. Why I run out in the parking lot and holler at people when they go by buses with red lights flashing in the circle and we're loading kids. Just, you know, why we do what we do in our business.
Some of these other, I mean, if the 14 million is just for the bus garage part, there's a good chunk of money into these other capital improvements as well. If this doesn't pass, like what is the scope or current condition of the boilers? To me sound like that's a pretty expensive chunk of it. Like, are they leaking? Is it visible that there's problems? Is there just ongoing maintenance that's every month or two? It's a big deal. Like, where are we at if this doesn't go? What are the numbers saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. I'm Joe Flansburgh, I'm the Director of Facilities. Say probably about 2 or 3 years ago, the folks that do our preventative maintenance on the boilers, encountering some issues with the boilers, they said to me, you know, they're getting to the end of their useful life. It's time for you to start thinking about replacing them. Went on to the list of what we call our BCS items, building condition survey. And we have to prioritize those. We pared back a lot of that from the last project, but that was one of the items that we felt like had to stay on. Personally, I think if we don't do it, we're going to be looking at potentially losing some instructional days due to the loss of heat in the buildings, cost of repairs, and downtimes. So it is important. It's a high priority item. That one in particular. It's not just the boilers. The boilers are starting to show their age, are starting to have issues. But it's also peripheral devices, associated piping and valving, and pumps. Pretty much everything that's in that room over there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty big item.
So Jake, to answer your question, if the project doesn't pass, like we did last time, we're going to have to come together and say, what's the next step? And again, we did that based on the exit poll survey results, so I think we would lean on that exit poll survey results. And if there's widespread agreement that they don't want to, does not want a new transportation facility, then I think we have to look at what our next step is. Do we put out a project that doesn't happen? Again, I think you've heard from a lot of people, that's a need. That's not a want, it's a need. You know, and again, you know, I appreciate Chad saying, I've been in there. I think there are some people who say that's not a need, but they've never been in there. Our buildings are, if you have a question about do we need a garage, please contact me. I'm more than happy to bring you up there and show you that garage, have you talk to our mechanic, and he can kind of show you around and let you know exactly what issues are. The last project, we had an open house. I think we had 15 people who bothered to show up and actually check out that garage. So it's a need, for sure.
Garage over here and the other one over here, would that be able? Would you still get your 77% on the other project with the boiler?
So again, what we have to do is we have to plan for the vote, so there's lots of legal things. So at this point, we can't break it.
I don't mean this one, but you have to come back next year and let's pretend you broke them up. Would that one be able? Like the real needs, I mean the boiler and the smaller project?
Yes, so you could, so years ago, I believe, prior to me coming, they built that stadium, and there was a separate proposition, turf or grass, and the community said we want grass. So yes, you can do that.
So we get state aid for the boiler, we just broke these into smaller chunks. That's an aidable project.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what is wrong with the art sinks? Because to me, it just looks like they just need a really good job. I mean, that kind of looks staged, to be honest.
No, it's not staged. What you're seeing is normal use, so they're heavily used. They've been used for a number of years. I don't know how old they are, but there's a lot of paint that goes down there. There's clay that goes down there. There's traps in there. Those are leaking. The piping's leaking. We've had to do a number of repairs on them. They're just old and they're just showing their age, and they definitely need to be replaced, I would say.
Right now, because we do have a ceramics program, so we do have portable clay sinks. Those are problematic because basically it's a bucket under a sink that the art teacher has to empty. So we are looking at replacing the sinks, which have, again, a lot of paint, a lot of clay, are leaking. And we're also looking at putting in sinks that would be appropriate for ceramics.
What exactly is the painting tools for it?
Painting booths are used both in technology as well as in
That way it's trappy. It's just like when you paint a car, you have to a certain area.
Wondering what's going.
You may not know about
that. We use that a lot, I guess.
But it's,
As a tech teacher, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's stuff there's chemicals that get aerosolized when you're spraying things. And the old school way, old farmers would just spray stuff and the mist would go everywhere. And today, everything has to be captured in
What
some
are we
fashion.
spraying? I guess I don't understand what.
Well,
Paints, lacquers,
When they're making projects, they're working on woodworking and
It's all
stuff.
hands-on.
Those things they bring home, they're learning how to use the tools, they're learning, technology, they're learning construction,
Yeah, back in
they're
the day,
building things.
with chemistry lab, back in the day, there were certain experiments that had to be done underneath a hood with particular type of glass
That I
over it
recall.
and a hood over the top of it.
the other questions.
Some of the stuff, we just have to trust that the experts that are running the school are making decisions that are cost effective for what these things cost. And it might sound like something you don't want to buy yourself, but for the
Well, that's why I'm
community.
asking the question. What they're
We have a
for,
great
because
art program in this school. The technology stuff is amazing. I think for a small town school, this place has a lot of stuff. I grew up in a school in an area that was booming. There was tons and tons of building, and the high schools were getting overcrowded in a very short period of time. And it was that sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for kids, but there's a lot of things that fall through the cracks when you're overstuffed and overcrowded, and you're constantly 10 and 20 years behind on projection for what a school needs.
So, and I'll just say, and I can talk about this all day. I'm so proud of our kids, and I think this is a pretty special place. I was at the Veterans Day Assembly, and you see kids who are in the choir. Choir ends, the band goes to play, and they step off the stage and go up on the stage, and they're in choir and band. And those same kids are going to be playing tomorrow afternoon for, they just won a sectional title, now they're playing in the Class C finals. People talk a lot about Victor, and again, this is not, this is off the record, so. But I'm awfully proud of what we offer kids, and it's not easy to keep it going. Again, we've tried to find that revenue to make sure we don't lose programs. I was talking with one of the veterans today. 5 years ago, we had a student, a diver, to go back to your comment, Marty, who was a 3-time state champion. We don't have a pool. The kid won 3 state diving championships, and when you get past sectionals in diving, you're not competing against Class C schools. You're competing against every diver in the state. Class A, Class B, Class C. And he wins 3 state championships, is an All-American, and he goes to the Naval Academy and dives for the Air Force. Goes to the Air Force Academy and is diving for the Air Force Academy. Now a pilot, just graduated and is now a pilot. Last year, little Bloomfield won a state softball championship. Just missed one the year before. Last year, we won a state softball championship. Our pitcher is now at West Point and is pitching Division I. We won 5 section titles and a state championship last year. We got kids going to every college that you can think of. We got kids going out into the workforce. Heck, I was just invited by one of our former graduates. Kid graduated 2 years ago. To come and take a look at the house that he just bought that he's flipping on his own. I mean, our kids are amazing and they do everything. And the fact that we're small enough to allow those opportunities for those kids to do those things, I think that's a point of pride, and I think that's a piece to celebrate. And I would say, while everybody says, well, Victor is special because they've got great academics, they've got great athletic programs, and they've got great music programs, I put our kids up yesterday. And we, by the way, did get a chance to play them in softball last year because we beat them the year before and they didn't want any part of it. So, again, I could talk about our kids all day. Thank you.